Todd, welcome to the show, man. How's everything going, my friend? I know it's been a busy time for you here. How's it going?
It's been great. Pilot season is always crazy hectic, but we turned in our ABC pilot on Saturday morning at 1 in the morning, and I'm slowly literally digging through the piles of shit on my desk, trying to get back to the surface of my desk after 2 months. I mean, I've been on a sprint for like the last 5 months, a sprint to production, so there's a lot of debris to collect. But I'm happy. I'm feeling good, and I'm ready to get back to the world, so this times out perfectly.
Well, Todd, you've got all this going on, and yet here's a couple of guys calling you to talk about a film that you made 30 years ago. Is that kind of an escape, or is it just like, really, we're still talking about that?
Oh, no, I love it. Honestly, I tell everybody that I was told The Wizard was complete as hell of a flop, and not until the first DVD came out, and I found it literally just by accident online. I was not sent any kind of notice it was coming out. I found it on Amazon, I think. And then I started looking online, and I realized, oh my God, people like this movie. I had no idea, because it had been 20 years, I forget when the DVD came out, but it had been so long, and I wasn't connected to the fan base for it. Although, as I've been working in the last 10 years, I've noticed crew members and actors who are like 28 to 35. They're all like, "Oh my God, you did The Wizard?" They'll meet me in the morning, and then they'll Google me at lunch, and then come back and they'll ask me about The Wizard. I go, "Oh, there's an audience there that I was never told about." You were all like 5 years old when I made the movie, but that's okay.
We fit in that demographic exactly, Todd. That's us, right in the middle of the Nintendo-powered generation, but. You know, Todd, this movie is 30 years. As in December, it'll be the 30-year anniversary of its initial release. $6 million budget for this thing. First off, does 30 years time has just been a strange mistress for many of us now as we get older. Does it seem like 30 years? I mean, it's unbelievable to really, I'm sure for you as you worked on the project 30 years ago, unbelievable.
It's hard to believe it's been 30 years, except when I see Fred Savage at Direction of Field events. And I go, oh yeah, it's been 30 years. Because he's a grown man with 3 kids, but it's amazing. So time is a strange mistress. I agree with you.
Well, Todd, some people consider this movie kind of a 90-minute advertisement for Nintendo, but they're really missing out on a truly heartwarming story of a family kind of going through a loss of a loved one. Does that ever bother you, the characterization of it being a Nintendo advertisement?
Listen, I worked very, yes, it always bothered me. It bothered me when the movie came out 30 years ago, because I worked very hard on this movie, and I connected with the complex backstory. It's a very complicated backstory. Come on. And we tried this whole family photo thing to kind of tell the story, and then we kind of abandoned that. Eventually, just opened the movie with Jimmy on the road. But trying to tell the story of a married couple with 4 kids, twin siblings, male, female, one drowned in front of the other. That tragedy separates ruins this marriage. One gets, it's a complicated backstory. But I always thought I always related to Jimmy, honestly, that Jimmy, clarifying for me as a director, the story of Jimmy's journey was my big focus, because I love that kid in the movie, and I believe kids are fueled by a very strong emotional drives, and that was my thing coming in, was to strengthen what was in the script already, and I can talk about that later.
Well, kind of talk about the script and about the use of Nintendo in the script. What was your kind of knowledge of obviously Nintendo had been a big thing for about 4 or 5 years at this point. Talk about kind of your knowledge of this phenomenon and, just kind of your awareness of it when you came on to direct the film.
Listen, I was very frank with Universal, and I said, I am not a gamer. This is not my world, and that's why I should direct this movie. Because if I can make it interesting to me, I can make it interesting to anybody. Because I need to tell this story so that people that aren't in the world can appreciate it, and still be exciting to people who are in the world. So, Nintendo was sort of a no-brainer. They were the biggest name in this game, I think, at that point. It's so funny you mentioned that we never say their name, and we never say it, but it is seen. It is seen in that magazine that they look at that gas station bus stop, I remember it's in that graphic, isn't it? And isn't it Nintendo's brand in that graphic?
Yeah.
For Video Armageddon? Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah.
But
Yeah, and obviously the licenses were there, the images were there. I think a lot of the, although I think a lot of the footage was shown from some of the stack arcades, which were not part of Nintendo, but housed a lot of the games. So that's probably how that was able to be gotten away with. That's always kind of a question I had, is just kind of the use of the licenses and the Power Glove. Todd, you had the Power Glove in there, man.
Yeah, we did. Licensing was a very different game in 1989. I mean, if you wanted Coke in your movie, you just bought some Coke, or you called Coke, and they sent you 10 cases. You know what I mean? They didn't pay you anything, and you didn't pay them anything. You know what I mean? It was a totally different game. Product placement had not yet been invented. And so this idea, that is really why you watch Fast and Furious, it's a fucking GM commercial, or whichever car that is, I forget now. But, it's a commercial for that brand of car, So I feel like the Wizard was ahead of its time. It had totally had an integration with Nintendo, but that was core to the concept. Video games were core to the concept, and video games were very popular at that moment. I think, if anything, I always have thought the Craven side of the Wizard Genesis is this sort of Dolly Parton, Sylvester Stallone equals Rhinestone kind of thing. This Hollywood chemistry of Fred Savage is popular, Nintendo is popular, let's put them in a movie together, you know what I mean? But it wasn't ever conceived to be a Nintendo commercial, despite what everybody said. It was always intended to put two things together the kids were massively attracted to, which is Fred and video games. So that's really the origin of that. And then, we had the Power Glove, and I, of course, didn't know anything about it. No one had heard of it. It was brand new. But they had the dude. It was literally like, I once worked with an actress who came to set with $100,000 worth of gems, with the guy with the gun and the locked briefcase. And it was kind of like that. They didn't have a gun, but they came with it in this lock. And that's why I kind of made the case like that in the movie, because he came to set to show us one day, before we shot. He brought the set to show us what it is and how it works and all that stuff. And they had it in a lock case with this little foam things on the side. It was very fancy and very James Bond. So I said, I wanted to look like that. I want to have a case that he opens that is super cool. And, we had to kind of, in that era, everything, all the video games were pre-recorded. And then we had to project them on film onto the screens we were using. Mm-hmm. So it was a very different technology than you did today. So we had to pre-plan all the segments we were using and try to figure out how to make that glove look cool. Because I think it looked cool, but apparently from everything I've heard, it never was cool, right?
Yeah, it didn't quite work as we had all hoped.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry I promoted it so extensively for me.
We don't blame that for you, Todd, but we got to talk about this amazing cast you had the chance to direct. Fred Savage from the hit TV show The Wonder Years, and then landing key stars like Beau Bridges and Christian Slater.
Well, I came in and Fred was attached. It was a Fred Savage movie, and I liked Fred in The Wonder Years. He was 12 years old, and I liked him, and so I met on the movie, got the job, and then Mally Finn cast the movie. And if you know her career at all, Mally cast some of the greatest movies of our time: Terminator, Titanic. A lot of great movies. So she was just starting her career at that time, as was I. And so we had a great time casting that movie. And Beau, I think Beau came on first. Christian had worked with Jeff, his brother, and really wanted to work with Beau. So Beau was a magnet to get Christian. And so I met with everybody and convinced them all to do the movie. And I remember I met Christian for lunch, and he was 19 at the time, and convinced him to come on. And he wasn't huge at that point. He'd done Heathers, I think, right?
Yeah.
That was his big thing at that
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
And so he was on the way up to be a superstar, But and then Jenny Lewis is and then Luke Edwards was sort of a discovery we found that it just through casting, and then Jenny Lewis was frankly the most interesting story in that I love performance, I love actors who can act. So Universal and I greatly disagreed over who should play this part, and Jenny was not in the mix yet. I found this wonderful, quirky actress out of New York who wasn't as pretty as Universal wanted. They brought me basically this Texas beauty queen that they wanted, who couldn't act that way, or couldn't act at all.
Wow.
But I agreed to spend a day with this little girl, and I did every theater game. I knew Allie and I did things them together. Could not get this girl to act in any way that was workable. So I told Universal I can't cast this girl. So I did my best, and it's not possible. And then this Jenny came into this wild card. I think something she was doing, it just fallen apart or something. I don't know, but she wasn't in the mix until the 0 hour. She wasn't even in the mix. And we met, and she was adorable visually, and she could act like crazy. And I was like, I'm happy, they're happy. And Jenny became this magical missing piece that we didn't have until like the 11th hour. This movie it just happened very fast. I literally interviewed on a Thursday. I was hired on Friday, and I was prepping it on Monday and shooting 5 weeks later. Because
wow.
Fred was on his summer hiatus from the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
And for some reason, nobody had greenlit this movie yet, and they didn't have a director, and they were determined to make it during this very tiny window he had, like basically 8 weeks before he had to be back on the set of the Wonder Years, which was he was in first position with them. So this movie had to go, and it did, and we did this crazy fast prep, and it was a road movie shot in 35 days with kids, and it was crazy intense. But Jenny was the most delightful surprise in the casting mix because nobody saw her coming.
And just a tremendous musician to this day. Jenny Lewis was just performed here in Kansas City, where we are, at a local venue, and she's amazing. Does a great job with her music career, and I'm a huge fan of Jenny Lewis to this day. So that was her start, of course.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember her playing or singing on set. I don't remember that ever happening, but I was pretty busy, so maybe she was doing that off to the side somewhere. But she was always a super smart, capable actor. Like, I knew she was going to be okay. So I'm really thrilled for her success.
Well, Todd, a lot of people, when we talk about The Wizard, of course, it came out a year after the hit movie Rain Man with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. And just kind of talk about the similarities, because there's a lot of people that point to the similarities in the films. Obviously, it's a kind of a cross-country trip, both featuring like a mentally handicapped person involved. And the scores are even kind of similar. Can you talk about just maybe some of the influence at all, or kind of happenstance that these are similar, or kind of what was the thought process there? Were aware of Rain Man, or kind of how did that
as I say, I didn't develop it. You can hear from the chronology. It was a fully written script by the time I got it, and I met on Thursday, and I was prepping it on Monday. So, that was part of the DNA. I'm sure that was part of the pitch that the writer had when he sold it. So I think that is a very apt comparison. I'm sure that was Rain Man's popular. His the kids Rain Man. I mean, we never talked about it like that, honestly. So when the reviews attacked it so simplistically like that, I was like, oh, that seems callow. But I mean, the movie just wasn't going to be for adults. It just wasn't. And
sure.
And in all honesty, I loved kids action movies as a kid, and I lived for them. So I knew who my audience was. I didn't know it was 5-year-olds. I thought it was going to be 10 and 12-year-olds. But it was. I knew I wanted to create a great action story, like a wish fulfillment story with kids. Like the hostess truck was in the script, and I love that idea. This whole idea of this adventure that kids can have. And for me, the video games was secondary. But I was very invested in Jimmy's emotional psychic dilemma. In the original script that I interviewed for, he's wandering with no reason. And I went to the writer, David, and I went to the producer, and I went to the studio, and I said, look, what if he's wandering, yes, but what if he's saying something? What if he's saying something? Just what if he's saying, California? What if he's saying that? Nobody knows what it means. And then at some point in the story, when they're on this journey, we end up passing by those dinosaurs, say, on the 10 freeway outside of, on the way to Vegas. And what if they pull over? And so this whole idea of giving closure to that story and making it mean, making his wandering mean something was my idea, and it was crucial to me. Because I think that little boy is smarter than everybody in the movie. As damaged as he is, he's trying to do this beautiful, joyful thing for his sister to leave her in a happy place. And that whole storyline, because it was my idea, and frankly, the producers and I did not get along. And they put in the script. And then the producers and I did not get along. It was a very difficult shoot in that the movie was a full hour too long. And I followed them and said, it's too long, we have to cut it. So we were contractually obligated to deliver a 90-minute movie. The editor's cut came in at 2.5 hours. There's a full hour of the Wizards to take it out. Which is mostly all backstory back in Fallon, Nevada. It's all the backstory of Corey and his friends. And there's these 3 boys who were great. They played his best friends and all their kind of adventures. And basically I had to write them letters that said, you are not only trimmed in the movie, you are deleted from the movie. The whole origin of this is gone. And I wrote them all letters, because that's what I could do in the day, because there was no email. And they were very grateful to know, because I didn't want them rushing their family and friends in to see the Wizard, and they're not in it at all. So it's very important to me that Jimmy's journey had meaning, and so we thought of this as we thought over many things in the movie, and by the time we got toward the end, we were shooting the chase sequence at Universal, and they came to me, my producers came to me and said, the studio doesn't want to shoot the ending of the dinosaurs. I said, wait, what are you talking about? They don't want to shoot it. And they don't think we need it. We can just take it out of the movie. We'll just cut it out of the movie. I said, no. We've come this far. I mean, he says California and all these places, where we built the whole build. So let's shoot it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then we take it out, But if we don't shoot it, that whole thing. So anyways, I just held my ground. For some reason, I got to shoot that scene. But nobody would rewrite it. And I kept saying, the thing doesn't work. So I finally, the night before we shot it, we were out in the desert, and I rewrote that scene, and I printed those pages on my dot matrix printer, my Apple dot matrix printer, and I brought it to the location, and I said, here's a page for you both. And I just told everybody what you're going to say. That's what's in the movie, and that's what tested so highly. That emotional journey, knowing that it wasn't just this craft a video game adventure, knowing that the story really wanted to be about this boy's journey that becomes a family journey of a realization. That's the best part about The Wizard. Mm-hmm. Despite the video game fun, that's the best part. So I fought very hard for that, so I'm happy it resonated.
Oh, absolutely. But The Wizard may be the ultimate time period piece of the 1980s. You got Fred Savage, Christian Slater, the Nintendo, even music featuring the New Kids on the Block. If there's a time capsule out there that's uncovered and it's from the 80s, do you think it's complete without a copy of The Wizard in there?
or a Vision Streetwear, whatever the fuck that was. Who remembers? I think we got some branded partnership or something with them and got free clothes, and they're branded everywhere. I've never heard of them before or after. But I don't know. I think it's some fan, when the DVD first came out, said if I could have 10 movies on a deserted island, 9 of them would be The Wizard. And I said, oh my God, that's one of the nicest things I've ever heard.
Oh, it's...
And through social media, frankly, for connecting with this audience on Twitter and now Instagram, I got hooked up with this guy who gave me all this. He's a Wizard marketing obsessed collector, and he travels around to all these movie shows and poster stores around the world, and he bought Wizard publicity materials from around the world. So he sent me this. I asked him, "Can you scan the Japanese poster for me? I've always wanted that. I've always wanted something like that for that." He just sent me this giant package of stuff with posters from Poland and Japan and just this amazing package of international marketing, which I see as a 29-year-old director. I had no idea that happened. They don't tell you anything. They tell you your movie's a flop, so you're not making a dime on it, and then you never hear from them again, basically. And that's how it happened. So social media has opened a door for me to kind of celebrate with the audience that loved it, this movie that I totally believed in and fought very hard for.
Well, that is wonderful, the power of social media and today to be able to connect with so many other people. I know there's conventions and so many things to do with this. And I know this wasn't my initial note, so I didn't send this to you, but I have to ask you about this because since I was a kid, my favorite character in this film, aside from the main cast, of course, is Will Setzer's performance as Putnam. No, he doesn't have a first name. He is the guy who, apparently this is a job. You can be hired as someone that retrieves runaways, because that's what this guy is. Always found him to be hilarious, amazing comic relief, and this just bumbling idiot that can't ever do anything right, that's on this trip trying to retrieve these kids. It's like, I've never heard of another person that retrieves runaways for a living, but that was Putnam, and Will Setzer did a great job as that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I came out of UCLA Film School, and right away I got hired by Steven Spielberg to write and direct some amazing stories in '86, 3 years before this. And so I went and took acting. Because in film school, I hadn't been able to study acting. There was no room in that class for me. So I knew I had to learn how to work with actors. So I took acting with a wonderful director named Zoon Darling, and in the class, one of my classmates was this man named Will Setzer, and we're trying to cast his role, and I could not find anybody in Hollywood that kind of fit in, that was funny, and I told Mally, well, I want to bring Will in, and he came in, and he won the part, and I couldn't be happy. He was a super nice guy. I don't even know how many movies he was in before or after, but it was a big break for him, and we had a great time doing it. I knew he could do it. He was that kind of actor. He's funny and physical, and could be kind of short and furious and indignant, and it was funny. And then the other lady from my acting class was the social worker who meets with Christine and Christine Bates, and where Jimmy's building the block that's through the glass window.
Yes.
That social worker is also from my acting class. I forget her name.
That's awesome. Yes, she when they kind of decided Jimmy needed to go to the home. Yeah, that kind of a main part when he had run away initially. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Todd, you had mentioned.
It was hard.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. It was a hard movie. We shot that movie 6 days a week on location, so there was just 1 day to rest and get ready for the rest of the week. And now you've heard we shot 40% too much movie. So it's like we shot fast. That whole chase scene at Universal, the one that happens in the rafters above the stage, I had to design all this fun stuff for that, and it ended up being I only had 4 hours to shoot whatever I could do. So it became whatever I could do was what I could shoot those 4 hours. So I always wanted that to be a great adventure. The whole Video Armageddon, that was my name, and I was obsessed with Alien at that time, and Aliens. And so I talked to my designer, Michael Mann. I said I wanted to be like this crashed spaceship on an abandoned planet. And we went through all these various designs that had creatures draped over the blast doors and all that. But we ended up, for money reasons, among other reasons, we ended up doing the blast doors and all that sort of spaceship design and all that sort of flashing red, yellow emergency light and all that. And then we ended up, the drapey tentacles became those balloon things, which were easier and cheaper than designing a dead creature. Anyways.
Well, speaking of that 40% of unused movie, is there any chance that you think we could ever see a director's cut or special edition in the future?
I'd say that everybody on social media, I said, you tell Universal. Universal has never contacted me ever about this movie. They've always treated it as like a stepchild. I'm thrilled. The fan base consistently, messages Universal that they love it, they want to see it. I didn't know it was coming out on Blu-ray, and it's by accident. And so I have zero clout in that equation. I don't know if in 30 years, I don't know if like Liberty Fox keeps their film and assault mine in Nevada, so maybe Universal does the same. I don't have a VHS tape of the full Cut of the Wizard because it was so long ago we cut that movie on film, and there was no videotape at all. So, I don't know where the rest of that movie is. I have the script. I can tell you what it is. I don't know where it is. But I would love to get people together and talk about it, get cast together and do commentary, and it would be tremendous fun. I mean, it's weird to talk to Fred and Luke about the movie because Luke was 9 and Fred was 12, and they don't really have like big memories of it, on sort of a production level. And their worlds were very different at that age, But, Bob Yeoman shot it. He went on to do all the Wes Anderson movies, and Bob was such a gentleman, and I was so happy to partner with him. And we had generally a very good time. Mally Finn cast it, and so, I would love to do some extras on it. I think it would be fantastic. So,
well, we're
all
on,
your important friends.
Yeah. if I had any, I sure would, Todd. In that we might even be able to get Tobey Maguire involved. You never know. I mean, he's a good.
It was also the internet revealed to me that Tobey Maguire was in that movie. I had no idea.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, he's one of Lucas's goons.
Has he ever talked about it?
I don't think so.
I don't. I didn't know he. So anyway, it's fun. And Lucas was hilarious. He's a hilarious villain, and he was lovely. And the kids were all really good. They were good kids. And that Video Armageddon was a bitch of a shoot. And that poor announcer dude, he was Australian. He lost his voice shooting it because there's smoke in the place, and so he lost his voice shooting it. And then we tried to loop it, but brought him into the ADR stage, and when they replaced Alex, I wanted to loop it because he'd lost his voice. I wouldn't have to yell it again later. He lost his voice the second time, so we just said, fuck it, just keep the original.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Lucas's friend, there's a friend of Lucas's that gets a line. He says something along the lines of, you're gonna rip their gizzards out, and Tobey Maguire is just standing there like with a little mullet. It's like Tobey Maguire, couldn't even get this random kid who was a horrendous actor gets a line, and Tobey Maguire, future Spider-Man, just kind of standing there off to the side. Nobody knows it's him. It's hilarious.
Oh, Lord. The other funny story is I did a series in 2007 called Misguided. It was a short-lived Judy Greer series, but I cast, the leading man was this actor named Chris Palaha. And he's been in lots and lots of shows. Chris had told me that we've met before, Todd. He says he lived in Reno, and I cast him as a young Christian Slater photo double in all those family photos we shot that go in the lunchbox, and then we're going to be part of the opening montage of family and all that we took out. But I went back and pulled up. I have all those prop pictures, and I pulled it up. I said, "Oh my God, it is Chris." It was the first time he'd ever worked anywhere. He went on to become an actor. I said, "That is crazy."
Wow.
So
that's
you never know. You never know.
Well, Todd, this has just been so delightful. We're talking about this and 30 years later, and really, and to share kind of just a quick personal note here, like what it meant to me. Like I grew up in the Midwest, and for me, things like Nintendo and movies were such an escape, and to have a movie like this that just kind of showed a kid that from a small Midwestern town, like what's possible in the world. Like, you can go on this adventure, you can do these things, you can go to, California was like, might as well have been in another world to me. And since then, I've been there a ton of times and experienced so many things. It's like The Wizard. I think it's a great movie for kids, young people. It shows you kind of what's possible, in a large capacity. That's a really powerful thing.
Well, it's funny. I have, right now, I have triplets, 9-year-olds. So they haven't seen it yet, but I think I'm going to show it to them to see what they think.
Absolutely. Before we let you go, Todd, I've got to tell you, I'm sure you've heard some of these before, but because we're doing this podcast, some of our listeners might not have heard it. We have to go through a couple of the literal translations of the film's foreign language titles. Okay, so in Germany, it's called Joystick Heroes. In Japan, it's called Sweet Road, which makes no sense at all. The Wizard of Video Games in Italy and Brazil. Video Kid in France. The Champion of Video Games in Spain. Game Boy in Sweden. Game Over in Finland. And my favorite, The Child Genius in French. So you could have used any of those titles, and I guess we probably never would have seen it because it would have never made it to theaters if you'd have used any of those titles. But those are some of the titles worldwide, Todd. Those are all kind of funny.
I've seen that French poster, and it's amazing what the French do. They made it look like a François Truffaut movie or something. It's just a picture of Luke, a beautiful little color picture of Luke with his lunchbox, and it's all in white. There's no, video game graphics. There's nothing. It looks like a little art film. It's kind of amazing. So the international marketing was fascinating when I got that package from that gentleman. So, anyways, you guys, this has been fantastic. I'm grateful you still enjoy the movie. Any filmmaker who makes any movie wants to believe it connects to an audience where it has lasting value, and I think there's magic in story. I've always believed there's magic in storytelling. That's how I related to movies as a kid. So the fact that I've given you a little bit of magic is kind of fantastic to me. So I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, definitely the case, Todd. You got a lot coming up, a lot of big things. We'll definitely be in touch. Definitely promote all your projects, on our social medias and website, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future. 30th anniversary of The Wizard. It will officially be December 15th, but you know what? We're going to celebrate it all the rest of the summer. It's a summer movie. Going to watch it at least 3 times this summer. Todd, can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. Be well.
It was an honor. Take care.